Today, the PS2 turns 25, or at least in Japan. They were hogging that gem of a console all to themselves for a couple more months before all of us Westerners actually got it. And I don't think the console needs any further introduction. I mean, it's only the best-selling console of all time, and if the Nintendo Switch ever beats it, it will be a very, very sad day indeed. So I just wanted to reminisce about this black cuboid over here for a while, and man, can I just say how good it looks? Especially when you got all of the different accessories and the stand and all of the other things you could snap onto it. And okay, even though this is probably the more iconic design, the thing I grew up with is this right here. A silvery PS2 Slim. Basically the same thing, but with a couple of changes. Number one, instead of the disk drive sliding out, it pops open like this. Also, you do have an integrated RJ45 port. It also means that the power supply is now external, and also you have no expansion bay like you have with this model where you can put your hard drive. Then at the front you have your two memory card slots, two controller ports, even though most consoles, actually pretty much all of the consoles from that generation had four, but that didn't really matter to me because, well, I didn't have anyone to play with. Anyway, plus at the front you have this special connector which actually disappeared from later editions of the console and isn't on the Slim at all, just for connecting various PS2s together, as well as USB ports used for a plethora of things, like for example being able to print photos right from the console or being able to move screenshots and films from it like I recently shown off in a different video. I honestly can't believe that the PS2 of all things has the most uses for USB ports of any console I ever used, because apart from maybe the Kinect on my 360, have there been any other good uses for USB ports in consoles since? And if you want to learn more about what's exactly inside this thing, I actually did a short a long time ago, basically taking this whole thing apart. So that could be of interest to you. Though of course this trip down memory lane isn't complete unless we actually try some of the standout titles for this console, and given exactly how popular it was, you can probably argue all day about what were the most popular games for that console. I know that games like Final Fantasy X were pretty big and important to the PS2, but I tried it once, died in the tutorial, and I haven't touched it since, so it's not going to be appearing in this video. Now the first thing I want to try is Gran Turismo 4. A game that just blows my mind by how complex a PS2 game can be. Like just the fact you get so many different cars, so many different racetracks and events in a game from 2004/5, depending on how you count, is just mind-blowing. And the level of detail is also absolutely staggering. Now when you look at the graphics themselves, sure they aren't the best now. In fact, probably the thing that dates the game the most is really the cars themselves look fine, it's just kind of the backgrounds, the trees, the resolution itself, even if it is one of the few games on the PS2 to run on 1080i. An issue with it is that it still ends up looking pretty grainy, and there's a lot of almost, I wouldn't call it aliasing, I would say pretty much aliasing. And also, I have not played this game in a while, and I'm kind of struggling to drive here. And obviously another big thing is that the lighting is pretty much non-existent. There are some levels in the game where you have some stuff like shadows and basically just cheap god rays going through the trees, but that's about it. Now if you want something that blew my mind graphically when I was younger, look no further than the Star Wars tie-in games. Now this was just the pinnacle of graphics for me back in the day, and it's still pretty impressive. I can't remember how to actually play. There we go. Just button mash, and you kind of get through everything. I have no idea what style of lightsaber fighting this is, but okay. But it was generally very impressive at the time, and I just love the interactivity, just how everything explodes, how droids just disintegrate into all of these pieces, the way they kind of light up from the heat of your lightsaber. I really love this thing. It really made you feel like you're playing through episode 3 of the movies. Even if I didn't really like episode 3 at the time myself, I thought it was all scary and depressing. But okay, those games are fun, but there's one that holds an extremely special place in my heart. And that is, of all things, this. Need for Speed Underground. Now I kind of went into this during my retrospective of this game on the Other Worlds channel, but basically, The PS2 was my first console ever, more specifically this one right here. This one I'm playing on right now is just one I got later after, unfortunately, the disk drive in this one broke. A fate that unfortunately a lot of these consoles meet. I got it for Christmas soon after moving to the UK to make the transition to living to this strange foreign country where people talk weird a bit more easy for a kid like me, and with it I got Need for Speed Underground. Now this was my first proper game. Before that, well, we had our PC running, what was that, Windows 98 at home, and the only games I had on it were things like Deluxe Ski Jump, and of course you can't forget Space Cadet Pinball. And then all of a sudden I went from games that look like this to games that look like this. I mean, can you just imagine how mind-blowing it must have been to a 5-6-year-old me at a time? So this video, reminiscing my favorite ever console, my first ever console, cannot be complete without going back to where it already began for me. Doesn't this bring back memories to a lot of you? This Infinite Tunnel right here, this music I can't play for copyright reasons. Now again, this isn't too amazing graphically when compared to the PC, but I had no point of reference back then, again, compared to what I was playing at the time. This was just mind-boggling, and it still looks okay-ish in certain areas. The reflections on the road, you know, are pretty, I won't say impressive, they are very much just baked into all of the textures, and it just makes the roads look, it makes the roads just look wet 24/7. It was a big criticism of the game, but I mean, it does very much make the game kind of stand a test of time when it comes to graphics. And then of course there's a motion blur when you pick up a lot of speed, which is another thing this game is kind of infamous for. But I mean, I love it. So I mean, what else is there for me to really say? This console, man, is such a big piece of me as a person, but also just an entire gaming industry as a whole. But again, I don't think I'm saying anything that's too much of a revelation there. It's the PS2, everyone loves the PS2. And the funny thing is, it was also my own PlayStation. The generation after that, I went to the Xbox 360, and after that it was pretty much just PC for me, apart from a few small exceptions here or there. So I'll probably be still playing this 25 years later, because the library is just so big, and the games are just so good. So here's to you, PS2, here's to you. And here's to our patrons for making this video possible. So maybe check it out, it's gonna be down in the video description below. Plus huge thanks to Gavin Burns, Justin Rage, Ella Vroniak, Bartosz Voka, Patrick Harrison, Nola Pseudonym, Meg Sumner, Sheet Allcroft, and Level Up. But anyway, that's all it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, remember to subscribe, like, whatever, and I'll see you all in whatever I make next. Goodbye everyone. Goodbye.